Hello, everybody. I want to talk a little bit about the term upper body cabinet, which refers to our positioning of the different body parts of our upper body when we're riding, when we're sitting in our saddle. And the reason this is such a good analogy or metaphor is that it evokes the image of a package. A cabinet is something that may have different, layers and little doors and hinges and things that might be moving, but when it's closed, it's one big package, right? And so maybe that's a bit of a static image. I would like to look at it more as if you're thinking of it as a package that's held together in an elastic way. Like imagine your upper body is covered or sort of engulfed by a flexible membrane that makes your upper body sort of reminds yourself when you're riding of something that can move and can be flexible, but it should in general stay a unit. And the reason that it's so important is that the rider's seat bones is one of the major communication tools for the horse to understand where and how we want to move together, right? And so if you're putting yourself into that context, and if you're making yourself into a cabinet in your upper body, meaning, and I'll get into how you're going to do that in a moment, meaning that you're moving as a unit up here rather than different pieces, this translates in terms of your weight aids so much more clearly, and your horse will understand that when you're sitting to the right, that means something, and not just a little something, but something definite, right? And so let me just talk a little bit about how you can sort of put yourself together into this, elastic type of package or cabinet in terms of your upper body. What I like to do when I'm, stiff and cold in the morning is I roll my shoulders back. I might turn my head side to side. I might, press a little bit underneath where the skull cap starts and attaches to the neck vertebrae, and loosen up some of those tense muscles and tendons in there. And then roll the shoulders back, deep breath in, think about your sternum rising as if it's being pulled up by somebody on a silk thread. Let your shoulders drop down. Shoulders dropping down is such a really wonderful thing that comes from classical ballet too, where that automatically creates a beautiful positive tension in, this real upper part of your upper body. And then you might think, okay, so where am I in terms of my vertical alignment? Make sure you're not leaning forward too much. If anything, you want to slightly lean backward, as if you're leaning just a little bit against the vertical wall behind you. But you're not allowed to really lean and touch it. You're just kind of sensing it there, right? And when you do that, like I'm doing right now, and I'm still flexible, of course, in my pelvic area. So you see my belly button goes forward and backward through the whole time. But I am overall in an elastic yet sort of quiet position right now because of the way of how I think about my different body parts, right? And so when you think about just ever so slightly leaning back, that is usually the moment when you can start to feel your psoas muscles. Your stomach muscles are one thing and your back muscles are another. Those are the outer muscles groups that hold your cabinet together, but there are the psoas muscles that are on the inside, which attach to the inside of your spine, go through your pelvic area, and then attach to your femurs. And those are really, really important also to keep all of this a unit, right? So now you have sort of the bigger sort of center of your body kind of aligned, and you're becoming aware, and it's becoming more of a unit. Now, the arms eventually, when you have all of these things a little bit more orchestrated and automated, the arms will, in the beginning, serve you best when you keep them just loosely tucked in to your sides, so that when somebody would look at you from the front, there would not be any air between your elbows and your rib cage. And not like in a tense way, because that would make you pull up your shoulders, but in a, again, elastic kind of, movable, but still kind of connected kind of way. So that the cabinet becomes more and more one unit, and there's not an arm out here or a hand this way unless you specifically do so with an intention and a reason. But most of the time, will serve you best if you just keep your elbows here. And now your lower arms can, of course, change and vary. They're like the arms of a crane, I always say, you know. You can bring them up. You can bring your hands closer together when you have a little bit more balance of a horse. It can be hip wide, which is, you know, a really good working position for the most part for most horses. They can be low, they can be medium, they can be high, and the more collected movements, they will come up here. You know, but you can see that everything else in my body stays a unit. So if I ride a corner here, for example, my inside shoulder comes back, and I always say, imagine that, you know, your shoulders move your hands. Like if I'm in the shoulder to shoulder mode, like I am right now, where my body is moving in sync with my horse's shoulders. So my shoulders follow the horse's shoulders. Right shoulder goes forward when the right horse's shoulder goes forward, right? So when I have my elbows attached to the sides of my body, that actually, if you pay attention now to how your seat bones feel, you can feel how they're having a little bit of a rotating effect. And that is something that a horse really loves, because you're not just sitting stationary. That's again why it's an elastic package, an elastic cabinet up here. Right now, I'm saying to my horse, we're moving in sync, and I'm following your movements. Right? This is sort of a long rein kind of invitation for the horse to, you know, stretch forward, downward without me requiring any real consistent elastic rein contact, but my shoulders are swiveling in this shoulder to shoulder movement. If I were to go into more medium walk type of thing, I would go and stop my shoulders swiveling, because right now I might prepare for maybe a trot transition, and you can see how my hands are moving forward and backward, and I'm just demonstrating, not with a real rein contact here, but just so that you can see my body parts, which are of course always supported by my lower leg and my weight aids as I need them. But just to suffice to say right now that there's a reason why, you know, we want to be aware and conscious of our middle body parts, right? And last but not least, our head is also part of this package, and our head should always be sort of aligned with the direction that we're traveling in when you're going in a linear movement pattern, right? But when we're in a lateral movement, for example, if we go into shoulder in, we will position the horse's shoulders inward. I'm not going to do that right now because she's not really on the aids right now. But you would, you know, have your horse look to the left, and you would look straight, like straight down the line that you would travel, you know, and that is, you know, one of the few times when the horse, your head will look into a different direction than the direction that you're riding in. And there are some other examples. I don't want to go into all of that right now. I just want to give you an idea of how, you know, if I would use my cabinet right now, I would say, here I'm swiveling to the left. I'm going to make my horse understand through my swiveling cabinet movement of my upper body that I want to go into a small circle. And look, I'm barely touching the reins, right? And that is one of those really important things that you will, you know, say sometimes maybe, oh, it's not so important yet. It is important at any stage of your riding that you will focus on your cabinet. And the same is true, of course, for the cabinet in the trot. There's no swiveling most of the time when you're riding a straight or linear line. When you ride a deep corner, your inside shoulder will come back. You know, the same in the canter. In the canter, you may rotate your inside shoulder in sync with your horse's inside shoulder, and it might look a little bit like this, like you're rotating it back in a sort of almost like an elliptical way backwards as your horse makes the canter stride. And you know, all these things support the horse in feeling in sync with you, and that is really one of the nicest things you can do for your horse. And then, of course, the rideability, the agreeability, and ultimately the joy and the fun of it all will become so much more enhanced when you're focusing on these details and when you're letting your horse have the benefit of, you know, you understanding how the horse moves and how you need to adapt to, the horse's motion so that you can both be in harmony together. So I think that's all I want to say about that today. I hope it gives you some ideas to think about, some things to try out, and I wish you happy riding. Thank you, Philly. Good girl.